Hey coaches, Corbin Smith here with More Than the Scoreboard. I wanted to let you know I created MTTS Sports Group. We specialize in team leadership training, leadership speaking, and staff development seminars in order to align your staff together. We also offer the Tour Crucible Event, which is a team leadership stress test, 6 hours, fully immersive for you. Go to mttssportsgroup.com and let us know how we can help. Enjoy the podcast. I'll go ahead and introduce you. Jon LaFleur, head football coach at Bishop Heelan Catholic High School in Sioux City, Iowa. Jon and I go back 30 years. It seems like there's a few guys on here. Iowa Hawkeye, team captain, defensive lineman, played at Bishop Heelan. And you're going into your 5th year at Bishop Heelan High School?
Yeah.
So went to the state championship game last year and also in 2023, correct? Yeah. So took over a program that I think went like 3-23 in the previous 3 years before you got there, and went 2-7 your first year, and then you've had it rolling. So anything you want to fill people in about
No,
you?
it helps to have good players, but it makes me
Yeah.
look a lot smarter. Yeah, for sure. But no, it's been a
Well,
lot of fun. So
yeah, no, I'll tell you what, for I'm sure there's people on here that know who you are, but Jon had a hell of a career at Iowa, and we were teammates for a couple years, and I mean, he was younger than I was, but he was kind of scary. You were kind of scary on the football field, even when you were young. So
that's a defensive lineman has to be scary. It's a
yeah,
persona you have to
yeah,
bring, So
a lot different than offensive linemen though,
yeah, those guys are
because
just fat. All they are is fat,
yeah.
and they hold all the time. So
Well, and here's another thing. We did our sizzle reel for our the Tour Crucible event that we're going around doing for high school teams. We brought a professional guy in, and he was there for all 7 hours of the event, all through the night, through lightning and everything else, carrying around a pack, that was probably 200 pounds. And so if people want to know where that came from, it came from Bishop Heelan, and it was we had a great time. Did you
it was
guys,
awesome.
did you guys enjoy it?
It was awesome. It was awesome. I don't really know what it taught us, but I know it taught us something. I know
Yeah.
it's hard to quantify what all that, but to have those kids go through that together, mainly, it's all about creating that unison, and yeah, it was, well, I liked it enough that we're going to do it again this year. So,
Yeah, you are. And
it's,
it'll be a little bit different this year.
yeah, the kids are like, well, we already know what's going on. I said, do you think they're that stupid? Just hold on your ass, fellas,
Do you think that and just focus on the tour here for a little bit. Do you think that it exposed some of your leaders, good and bad? I mean, not because you guys are pretty much already had your leader set, or who you thought. One of the questions we ask all the coaches are, who are the guys you want us to really look at and evaluate from a leadership standpoint, and see how they respond to things, how they encourage others. Um, were you surprised by some of the things you saw from your who you thought were going to be leaders?
Uh, if anything, I think it probably solidified who we thought, and then there was also a couple of kids that we weren't necessarily sold on that showed much more than what I thought they were going to have, and that, particularly a couple of the seniors that really ended up shining and, really showed an unbelievable growth from junior to senior year on the field. I think some of that stuff we weren't necessarily sold on, some of their mental state, and they showed it that night and then progressed into the season that way as well.
Yeah. I saw personally, and probably because he was your quarterback, but your quarterback, I know that both you and Taz, the quarterback's coach, had mentioned that, sometimes he can be a little bit quiet. And, I watched him and I pulled him aside a couple times and just said, okay, here's a situation where, you can do this. Like, you're not a leader. If you're the leader of the team, it's not a sometime thing, it's an all the time thing. And especially being the quarterback. And he really, towards the end, he was getting into it, and he really stepped up, and it was like all the time, just the encouragement, the way he talked to kids. Um, And then another kid that stuck out was Jacob Biggs. Is it Biggs? The offensive lineman?
Galvin, Galvin.
Galvin. Yeah. Why
Yeah,
did I
yeah,
say
yeah.
Biggs?
Big
Uh,
kid. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that had knee surgery,
Hmm.
right? Had torn his ACL prior season and was really unsure about, how he was very nervous about getting through it. And,
Hmm.
he pushed through it and realized that he could push himself past what he thought mentally he could do. And because, I mean, that's a natural thing, right? We both had surgeries. You tend to baby it a little bit until you've tested it. And so, um,
That was our biggest, fear with him throughout the summer because, he just babied it and just was afraid to push it. And that really was his turning point going through that. And I think just recognizing that, hey, I can, breaking that mental barrier that everybody has when you have surgery. So
yeah. Did you see a difference? And I'm just curious and if the answer is no, it's no, but curious if you saw a difference like when things got tough, because I know you didn't win the state championship, but you lost a game that you probably shouldn't have lost early on in the season or mid-season. Um, did you see a difference in how they responded from maybe the previous year?
yeah, I think so. Number one, when things got hard, especially when, practices got long or we don't do a lot of conditioning, but the days that we do conditioning, it was like, hey, we can do this. And if anything, it was a reminder of they can do things together. We're going to do this together. We're going to get through things together. And ultimately that's what you have to do, especially, in football is the most important. So, but yeah, we lost the game. We wrapped up the district championship and we had one game left for the for the regular season. So we had already established home playoffs and in the district championship. So it was a trap game anyway, and we went out there and it was on the road and we laid an egg and didn't play very good and got beaten. The team was a good team, but we got beat by a team we should have beaten. There was a big response that next week going into the playoffs, understanding that, hey, this is not what we are. What our standard is not that. Remember what we did together as a team in the Crucible in the event. There was a lot of reflection through the course of the year back to that event and kind of how it was. I don't know if it necessarily shaped us, but it was certainly a great springboard to get into the season and something to reflect back on as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, most teams middle of the season, you kind of hit that. I mean, I know as a coach, it was kind of, and I learned this from my dad, but you have to be very careful about practices, right? I mean,
Mhm.
not being soft on them, but you have to be smart. You have to be able to kind of read the team. And if you're healthy, if they're tired, if they're mentally drained, just what it is and adjust and adapt your practice schedule and your practice plan to really get the most out of your kids. And, you know, I would think the tour kind of helped them a little bit, from a mental resilience standpoint to be like, hey, we have a goal. We have a mission. Let's stay on mission, even though we're sore, tired, hurt, got beat, shouldn't have got beat, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
let me ask you this. I want to, because I didn't ask Matt Hughes about this, but I kind of did. But I want to ask you specifically because I know you were. I mean, we were all close to Coach Fry because he knew every single individual. He knew everybody's name. He knew your brothers and sisters' name. He knew your grandma's name, your mom and dad's name. Like he knew everything about everybody, right? But there were some guys that just innately, and it happens, on every program where there are some players that just become closer to certain coaches and some players that become closer to the head coach. And I know, I know the guys, the Rodney Peets, the Junior Seaus, the Willie McGinnis, the Curtis Conways at SC with my dad. Like they were really close to him. You were pretty darn close to Coach Fry. I would say probably more than most were. What what do you
More than most defensive linemen for certain. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think you have drawn and learned and taken from him in regards to being a head coach and the way you approach leading the program and building the program and sustaining a culture that you guys obviously have and have built.
Well, I think number one, and Coach had told as said it multiple times when he was alive, was surround yourself with great people. If you want to be good, you got to surround yourself with great people, and not just great coaches, but above and beyond everything else, people. And I think at one time when we were talking before we got on, is the lineage that he has with coaching is unbelievable. However, you look at all those people. I can't say that you go through there and you talk about a Dan McCarney or a Barry Alvarez or a Brett Bielema or a Bill Snyder. I don't think that to a man you could go back and go, "Hey, that guy's an asshole." You know, uh, those guys understand that before you're a football coach, you're a leader of people, of men. And so you have to treat them with some humanity, and number one, be a good person yourself before anything. You
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
you gotta do the right thing all the time, and then surround yourself with other great people as well. And then if you got the right dudes on board, you got a chance.
Well, I think the biggest thing I learned, like you said, I mean, there was a humanity about him that was bigger than the fact that he was Hayden Fry and everybody knew he was going to be in the Hall of Fame and everybody knew who he could go anywhere in the country and people knew I mean, he was so recognizable. I mean, whether it was the dark glasses or the boots or the accent or, the laugh or whatever it was. But his humanity, like you said, um, he put people at the forefront rather than putting, wins, losses, um, titles, championships, all that kind of stuff. How have you taken that and what you just said when it comes to your staff? The athletic director of Bishop Heelan, he's a good man.
Hmm.
Your booster club, you have 4 daughters. I mean, you're a dad and so how do you incorporate that lesson not just in coaching with your staff and who you surround yourself, but just in life?
Well, I mean, there's number one. I'm really fortunate where we coach. Coach at a Catholic school. Obviously, we talked about my alma mater, so I think we're blessed with not everybody being a great kid, but the majority of them are pretty damn good kids with high character and pretty good morals. And but what above and beyond everything is just be a good person yourself. It's not that hard to do, and you can still be an asshole but be a
Right.
good person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not necessarily being a good person, but doing the right thing. And everybody has that inherent nature inside of them to know what the right thing to do is. You know what's right and wrong, and it's not a hell of a lot harder to do the right thing. And if you do that, people will look to you and be like, "Well, coach is doing this," And if you can get all your guys on staff to do the right thing, which is difficult because you got guys from different walks of life, different ages. These younger coaches are a hell of a lot different than you and I are. They
Mhm.
see the world differently.
Which is good. I mean, it's good.
Absolutely, because they're
Yeah.
actually they're relating a little bit better to these younger kids that currently. Sometimes they need coached up, but doing it the right way. You need to coach your coaches up as well as coaching your players.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And from a culture standpoint, John, what you came in and I don't know the history. I mean, I know the history of Bishop Heelan in regards to you went there and the school has won numerous championships and always for the most part been successful. And like any program, sometimes they have down years, sometimes, they just get into a rhythm. But when you were there, have you kind of taken it back to the feeling within the community and on campus to what you felt when you were playing there? I
I think
mean,
we're getting
has
there.
that
I
come
think
into
we're getting there.
play? Has it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit. You get that from the community a little bit. You'll see them. I'll see them after Sunday mass or at a basketball game, hey, coach, we're going to get back there again this year, right? It's just now it's becomes the expectation to not only just get to the playoffs, but be in the championship and ultimately, hopefully, win one of these things. Um, we were in a bad spot when I took over, and be honest with you, when I took over, it was. And I got to give the my athletic directors of school a lot of props for taking the chance on me. To be honest with you, because I was, like you said earlier, I had 4 daughters. I didn't coach football until 6 years ago. I coach these kids. I coach my daughters. I want to be very involved with my kids growing up. So I coached them in youth sports and everything that they did. And then, kind of once that youngest one got in high school, took over. It was to them to give me the opportunity to come back and coach. And that first year I was a volunteer assistant. It was not good. It was just not what I remembered high school football, in particular Heelan High School football, what it should be all about. After 1 year, I got home after we got done with that season. We went 0-9 that year, so unwinning or only non-winning season that Heelan's ever had in its history, which is not great. Got home and told my wife, I said, I guess my little charade as a football coach is going to be over with because I'm not going back to that. I'm not going to try it. We go 0-9 and I was a volunteer coach and you're just thinking, man, this is not good. The coach who was there stepped down after that season. If it hadn't been my alma mater, I probably would have been a one-term coach, but I know how much football means to that school and how much football means to most high schools, especially I know in the state of Iowa and smaller schools around and throughout the country as well, football is kind of the outward face of what a school is all about. It's the most seen event. And I just couldn't leave Heelan be that way. So I took a chance on myself, I guess, and those people took a chance on me, and which is a big, having a guy that's coached football 1 year and 20 some years removed from college football. Took a chance, and fortunately, like I said, number one, I was able to hire some really good assistant coaches, and hired some guys. I think 3 of my coaches on staff were former head coaches at the high school level, and that helped. That helped
Yeah,
immensely because I
absolutely.
don't, all
Right,
the.
right. No, I
It's so
know.
much more than just coaching football.
Right.
It's all the BS that you have to go through, and those guys helped me kind of through that. But I had an idea how it needed to be done, and it's winning's not hard if you do the right thing, which is work hard. I mean, success is always on the other side of hard work. It's that simple. So if you do the hard work, you're going to be successful. Sometimes it just takes a little longer. So, but to
I
establish that back, that's what we were. That's just to get
well,
back to where we wanted to get. I feel like we're almost there. And the expectations back that from the coaches, from the staff, from the school, which makes it harder. It puts a lot more pressure on a coach, especially when you lose some really good players. You don't know how in the hell you're going to get it back again, but you put your nose to the grindstone and go. So,
but like you said, I mean, if you do it right, if you do it right, the expectations are going to be there and should be there.
yeah.
It's when no one has any expectations that you have to kind of look at yourself and say, "The hell are we doing? Like, what am I missing?" And I'll tell you this about the community, and it must have been like 2:45 a.m. or 3, and we go back down to the main field from the grass, and there's a police officer standing there, and so I go up and introduce myself. I'm like, "What? Everything okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I was just driving around and saw the lights on and wondered what the heck was going on, so I came through." And I mean, that's a community thing, right? And it was pretty cool. And like I said, did your athletic director and principal, did both of them, either of them, neither one of them, did they attend Heelan High School or
None of
neither?
them. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So,
kudos for them to truly understand that. You know, I don't know if you know this, but I went to an all boys Jesuit high school, and I'm not even Catholic.
mm,
And it was the greatest experience of my life because of the men and women that were on campus every day. Not just my coaches. My coaches were badass all the way around, right? But the priests and the women that were, my best teacher was my theology teacher,
Mhm,
and she was this big mountain of a woman, and she was amazing.
mhm,
My English teacher, I hated it. She was this older woman, tiny woman, made it fun for me. But being around those people because they understood what the culture of the school was. So it was easy for our coaches to say, we're an extension of our school. Most public schools don't have that, right? I was told by my first head coaching job principal, she came to me and she said, first, we hadn't had a winning season in 13 years when I got there. First year, we go 6-4. Everybody thinks it's the greatest thing from sliced bread. And this is a school that when I was growing up in Tucson, when I was in junior high elementary school, the school I was at, McClintock High School, was the school in the state of Arizona.
mhm.
They were winning championships. They were it. And that's all I could remember, right? And my principal came to me after the season. She goes, Corby, she goes, I'm so proud of you and the boys and the community and all this stuff. And she said, I'll tell you this. She said, we're going to have a great year, a great school year with our students. And I said, how do you know that? And she said, because the school year always reflects how well the football team did. And I said, really? And sure enough, it was a great year. A couple years later, we won 4 games. It was the opposite, and the school year was kind of so and so.
Yeah.
So
I had
um,
the same experience with our principal and our dean of men. It's our dean of students, I guess. He said he's told me several times after that year, that go back 3 years ago, when the first time we had an opportunity to have a winning season and get to the state championship game. He said that the change in the attitude of not just the kids that played, but everyone in school was just was tremendous. Just because there was winners are different, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's an attitude, and it's how you carry yourself, and when you start doing that, you know, success breeds success, and so, yeah, it was great it's great to know that, administrators around there recognize and realize that
right.
too.
No, my name's Maida Arroyo, and she's awesome. Still love her. She is great. But and the other thing is, because there are some situations where a school, I mean, I've been around schools that are top of the food chain and have all this success year after year after year, and producing all these players and going to the open playoffs. And I'm talking about Arizona and California, but the kids walk around with no humility. So having a culture within your football program that is kind of centered around, listen, you have to have your success with humility, and you have to teach that, because I think human nature says if I'm at the top, then I want everybody to know.
Mhm.
But I had this conversation with someone the other day, and we were talking about humility, and I said, you know what? I said, here's what people don't understand, is that people that are humble are so excessively confident in themselves and their ability that allows them to be humble, right? They have very few insecurities. And so when you're arrogant about your success, that comes from insecurities within you. But when you're humble, it's not because you don't believe it's not because you don't believe in yourself. It's because the opposite. It's because I know what I possess, and most humble people are the truest leaders, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
understand that they have to give credit to everybody else because that's what leaders do.
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, it's
um,
very true.
what, gosh, I was going to ask you about what are some standards that 3 or 4 or 5 standards that all your coaches, if we go to your players and say, hey, what are 2 standards of your program that they could just rip off just like that?
Be on time, if not be early. I think that's a number one thing. We have Crusader time, which is a translation of Hawk time from back in the day. If you're not fit, which is a translation back from, the Lombardy time, essentially. If you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. If you can be on time, you're ahead of the game, right? Be on time, be early, be ready to go. And then there's there's no off days. There's no not, there's no 50% days. We'll tell you if it's if we're going hard. Otherwise, we're going hard. It's work as hard as you possibly can each and every minute you can. If you do those things, be on time, work as hard as you can't hardly not be successful. I really believe in that. So, and I,
Anything you guys do, I mean, anything you tell them or really harp on as it relates to being in the classroom and being at home?
I think the number one tenets, and I learned this from my high school coach, Joe Malson. He was a great coach. Did graduate from West Des Moines Dowling, quarterback. Natural. Most quarterbacks are natural leaders. So he did an outstanding job to translate back in the day of what's important. And we still I try to tell these kids that number one, God should be number one, you know, and then your family, and then your academics, and then football should be down the list behind all those things. And if you have to make a mental approach and make an actual, real shift towards using those tenets as opposed to just talk about it and not do it. So, I'm not a Bible beating guy by any means. I
Right.
believe in God. I'm a faithful Catholic. I go to church every Sunday, but I'm not a guy that's going to be out there reciting Bible verses. But I think you have to have a relationship with God in particular. I think and that's what I think going to a Catholic school provides that opportunity to. And that's got to be the number one thing, because ultimately that's got to be the number one thing, and,
Absolutely.
but then your family, your relationship with your family, how you treat your parents, how you treat your sisters, how you do everything is how you do something is how you do everything. Right. And
Right.
then, we go to school for academics. So we go there because we're not there to play football. Football ends shortly for most of those kids. For 98% of them, they're done at the age of 18, but their mind will be with them forever. So those three are the most important things. And then football comes after that. But if you do all those other three things really well, gives you an advantage to be able to play football together collectively as a team.
What do you guys do? Because I know every coach does it differently, and some just based off the daily schedule of classes and when practices and all that, and how close their homes are and all that kind of stuff comes into play. But what do you guys do if a kid's struggling academically? And when I say struggling, I'm not saying he's failing every class, because I know at
Mhm.
Heelan, I mean, I again, going to a Catholic high school, like, I know what happens when you get a 2.7 in a semester and the dean of men brings you in with your mom and says, if you don't get your shit together, I got 5,000 kids waiting to take your spot. So we don't need you. And if that doesn't kick you in the tail, then I don't know what will. But what do you guys do if a kid is struggling in a class or a couple classes, or struggling with a subject, or or even, is a bad test taker? Because there's
Right.
kids out there that are like that.
Right. Number one, I think, and we try to, at least once a week during the course of the season, we're talking about academics at the end of practice. Hey, make sure you're doing your stuff right, doing those things right. And then if we have issues, I'm fortunate, I don't work in school, so that kind of stinks as far as not being able to be there and being amongst them. But we do have one coach that is a teacher on staff, so he's giving me grade reports on a weekly basis. And if we understand that somebody's struggling a little bit, we'll talk to them, pull them aside. Hey, number one, go talk to your teacher. Start a conversation to make it a personal event. And then if the teacher understands that you care enough to at least go talk to that person, talk to her about it, he or her about it, she's going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And then she could also tell you one things. And number one, if it's bad, you're not doing well, academics becomes the number one. Don't come to practice until you get things squared. I mean,
Yeah, that's
I
good.
don't care if it's our best guy. Hey,
Yeah.
we got to that's priority list: God, family, academics, football, and academics trumps football. So let's take care of what's the most important first, so we can take care of the other things. That's kind of been my. You, I don't have a lot of these like tried and true written down.
No, I know you don't,
No,
and that's what's
um,
great.
I just like I said, we talked earlier. I think I know what the right thing to do is, and what that innate and that thing inside you says, this is right and this is wrong. If you do the right thing, you're going to end up being in a good spot.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it like that because I know, I mean, same thing with me, but there were times where I swayed and I wavered from that. And not that I compromised, but um, as a head coach, like you said, you got these expectations, you may have this pressure and we like to say that we don't feel it, but the truth is you know it's there, right? And so but I in regards to the academics, like I've no coaches is like, nope, you got to make up your tests on your own time. Well, coach, the only time I can take it is at 3:30. Practice starts at 3:40. Well, go take it. I mean, that's I would have kids come in, to study and stuff like that. But yeah, it's sometimes it gets difficult to do. And again, I think you're super fortunate where you're at with the people that you're with in regards to administration. And let me ask you about this, John, because it's different from when we played. And God, we used to hear our parents say that all the time, right? It's different than when I was growing up, but it's truly flipped upside down, in my opinion. And that's, the whole college recruiting and how it works. No longer are 85 to 90% of scholarships given to high school kids. It's more like 30 to 35% from who I've talked to at the college level and what they're telling me. You had a kid, go to commit to Iowa, offered by a lot of people. Good kid, great player. You had other kids that went to lower level non-FBS schools or Division I schools, which to me is, I think that's great. You get to continue. What do you Where do you see college football recruiting as it relates to high school athletes going? And what are your concerns?
It is college football is a mess. It really,
Yeah.
you know, it's I think you got to start with talking about that before you talk about the recruiting. But I think they're getting where they need to get with the transfer portal as far as one time, at
Yeah,
one
I
portal
agree.
won't. But I think they need to have some rules there with maybe a one-time transfer. It used to be you
Absolutely.
transferred, you had to sit out a year. It made you think about wanting to transfer. Yeah, but these guys that just jump year after year after year. I mean, obviously there's exception to the rules. You get a
Sure.
family illness, those type of things. Coach leaves, maybe, but you do that. That's got to be fixed. And then with these kids getting paid the way they're going to get paid now, with the revenue sharing and on top of the NIL stuff that they're getting, um,
It's not reality.
it's not. They honestly need in my opinion, like a players association, kind of like the
Yeah.
NFLPA.
Right.
Number one, I think above everything, and I experienced some of this a little bit with the kid that got recruited, but agents, so-called agents. There's some bad dudes running around out there with some, and I think a lot of the current college kids are getting some really bad advice. And you see that, chasing dollars when there probably really isn't in reality a spot for them. And you see guys getting left out,
Yep.
and
Yep.
there, I know of some high school kids that that had committed, and there was some other schools that supposedly were going to come in and offer some money, above and beyond where these guys were at, and it's all secondhand hearsay, and some of these guys, these agents, talking to some college coaches that have been through here recently with for recruiting through the school, and they're really down on these guys are talking taking 20%, you know of a kid's earning. I mean, come on. Yeah. So, and to go back to your question, the high school recruiting, number one, it's just fast forwarded so much. As when I was when I you revert back 30 some years ago, when we were, I might getting closer to 40, but when we were in high school, uh, you know, it, you got a few letters your junior year, and then it's serious recruiting kind of started through this course of your senior season, and then you went and did and you signed 1st of February, and now these guys are, it's coaches are coming in and asking me about 27s, which is normal. That's my current junior going into senior class, and he's like, "What about 28 and 29?" I said, "Well, know a few 28s, but I said I couldn't even tell you most of the kids that are 29. I don't know the names. How in the hell how can you go recruit a freshman in high school unless he's just so,
Massive
you
or
know,
yeah,
if there's like the dude,
right.
but not letting the kids mature. We had a kid this year that that still doesn't know where he's going. I think he could play at the FCS level, really, really good tight end. And he's still looking for a place right now. And it's unfortunate because he had an unbelievable senior year. Really came on as an athlete, mentally, physically. He was one of the kids I think that really helped. The tour helped immensely.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I
um,
remember.
and he's a kid that if you put him back 30 years ago, he's going to have an opportunity to play at a pretty high level,
Yes. Yeah.
because these guys looked at his senior film and went, hey, this guy can play. But everybody's full. Then we got transfer portal issues that go on. And it's just some of these high school kids are getting left out. So I guess moral of the story and more that the way they have to do it now, if you get a spot, if you get an
Take
offer,
it.
take it serious,
Yeah.
especially if you think that, maybe that's as high as I can get. You got to be I think you have to be really honest with yourself and have a coach and parents that are really honest with that athlete as well,
Yeah.
and
Well, like with the MTCS sports group that I just created. Gosh, it's snowing. Okay, sorry. I been helping parents and mentoring athletes and their families and parents through the the recruiting process, not a recruiting service, just advice, action items, stuff like that, like we were talking about. But um, I had a kid that just signed with Black Hills State that's close to, the family and was up here in Colorado playing. His mom kept, and I love his mom and she's very in tune to what's going on, but I had to educate her a little bit. And I'm like, you don't have what you don't have. You got a couple NAIA schools, couple D2 schools, and I know you may want this one a little bit more because they express interest, but they haven't offered you. That you don't so you don't have what you don't have, so you can't wait, especially in today's day and age, you can't wait for that next thing that you think might happen, because if it doesn't, you're left out in the cold. And, do you get a lot of parents come to you and ask you for advice and stuff like that and
then
just understanding?
a little bit, but not a lot. More so the kids,
Yeah,
and
good.
yeah, which is great. I've been really fortunate here. We've had great parents. I don't, we've had a handful of issues, but nothing that can't be handled by any means. But you got to be honest with the kids. I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to recruiting now, and just talking about like the different levels in Division II and FCS and then our Power Four stuff. Talking to a couple of D2 schools and trying to get this particular individual a spot. They're like, hell, we had one D2 coach I talked to said that he had a tight end in there. He was there a year, played outstanding. He was on to an FCS school, and then after this year, he just transferred to a Division I school. So it's, if you get an opportunity, take it. And then, like you said, hell, with the portal and the way things work now, if you prove yourself, it's almost like Division II and FCS is a proving ground to try to get
Yeah,
to Division I.
yeah.
And
And this because coaches tell you, it's like you have an opportunity to take a transfer from a lower level that's proven himself for 2 years and has film at the college level against grown men, compared to taking a high school kid, that you're gonna have to develop. Like, I get both sides of it, right? I mean, we still need to develop this, but it's to me, it's starting to become where the D2, 3, and NAIA schools are, like you said, the proving ground or the developmental leagues. And I think we're getting better coaches at those levels too, better position coaches and stuff like that. So, I got to tell a quick story before we jump out of here. So, I think we all agree that the coaching community is very, very small, and anybody that's listening would agree to that. I'll tell you how small it is. So, we go out to the tour in August this past season to Bishop Heelan and do the tour. And I'm sitting there and we're doing our pre event brief with all the assistant coaches, and this kid walks in. Like I'm sitting down, I look up at him, and I kind of lean back. I kind of recognize him, and I'm like, and I thought he was like an actor, and he looked like someone, right?
Mhm.
So he sits down next to me, and we're sitting shoulder to shoulder, and I introduce myself, and he kind of backs up and he goes, "Coach Smith?" And I look back, and it was a kid. You have a guy on staff, one of your assistant coaches was I say a kid. He was a quarterback that I coached at Mesa Community College for a year. And this is in Sioux City, Iowa, right? And so then I'm out on the field, and there's another guy, another assistant coach, younger guy, probably 30 or so. Um, and I asked you who he was, and you told me, and then I went and introduced myself, and we got to talking, and I said, "Where'd you play?" Because he looked like he could still play it. He said, "I played at Wayne State."
Mhm.
I said, "Oh," I said, "How old are you?" And he told me, and I said, "Do you know a kid by the name of Daquan Samuel? Goes by Sam?" And he's like, "Come on, coach." He's like, "That's like one of my best friends." And Daquan was a kid I coached in high school for 2 years. I was
Yeah.
a D-line coach, and he was an all-state kid and, like, one of the neatest kids ever. So, you never know when you're gonna come across someone that you know, so, um, make sure you're
Yeah, yeah, that was a really unique experience, and it was so weird to have you guys, I mean, connect like that, yeah, it's great, and then, and hopefully, just to say, talk about the tour one last time before we're done is any coaches listening to this, man, I can't tell you, you learn. I don't like I said, I don't know if you learn so much about your team, but the kids learn about themselves, and I think that's number one. And because it was just it's a really unique experience. Um, it was great to have you and Derek back. I mean, you guys are, hadn't seen you guys in 30 years or
long time, yeah.
yeah, a long time. And, and what's so unique about football too, though, is, it's, you guys are back and it's like, I saw you yesterday. That's what it feels like, and talk about the house on, what was it, Van Buren and,
Van Buren.
yeah, that was a nasty, disgusting place you guys
Yeah, it
lived.
was, it sure was.
But,
We
it's
won't even
just,
start.
oh, no, you can go down a deep, dark place with some of those stories. You know, I just highly recommend it too, and I was really glad to see that Matt Hughes is gonna bring you
Yeah,
guys out
me
to
too.
West Branch. That's gonna be great. He asked me, my thoughts. I was, I'll just give it 100% on anybody that it's well worth it. It's well worth it. You guys do an outstanding job with the whole crew you brought. The guy's very professional, and it's well done, well thought out, and it's a kick ass deal.
Yeah. Well, thanks, brother.
Hey, you
I
bet, man.
appreciate it.
You bet. I'm
All
looking
right.
forward to getting you guys back out in August, and we're gonna have new lights, so we'll be able to see a little bit on our field.
Good,
They've only
good.
been up for 50 plus years, so
We
should
gotta have a breakfast where they come out and they bring their little
yeah, those
grills
breakfast
and do
burritos
some
aren't gonna
pancakes.
do it. I'll have to
That's
get the
okay.
parent group going a little bit and get
Invite the police department, invite the fire department, invite those guys to come out and just hang out and watch the last 30 minutes and, things like that. Get the parents out there. That's the funnest part. Because those kids at the end, when they see people they know, they're like, okay, mom and dad are here, or my uncle's here, or
yeah.
they're looking at me,
We
and
gotta
these
finish now.
guys, yeah, exactly. So, all right, dude. Hey, I
Awesome.
appreciate you, John.
Hey, you bet, Corbs. Same. Everything. Hope